So how do you make sure that you're the legal parent of your child through surrogacy? Well, make sure you get parental rights. In this video, we're going to talk about surrogacy parental rights. What's up? I'm Corlando Scott, and I'm an assisted reproduction attorney in Los Angeles, and I've dedicated my entire practice to helping people grow their family through different assisted reproductive technologies like surrogacy and egg donation and all that type of stuff. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about parental rights in the surrogacy process. We'll first discuss why the contract is not enough. We'll also talk about how is it done? How do you get those parental rights? And lastly, we'll discuss the different types of parental establishment processes. Let's jump in. Even though having a contract in your surrogacy arrangement is absolutely necessary, you cannot skip that part of the process. A contract in and of itself is not enough to make sure that you're declared the legal parent of the child that's being born through surrogacy for you. As I said, the contract is only the first half of the legal process. The second half of the legal process involves, I guess you could call it, the court's stamp of approval. We need to make sure that you've been declared by a court of law to be the rightful parent of the child that's going to be born through surrogacy on your behalf. So once you have that signed contract in your hand, we're going to wait a little while, but ultimately we're going to have to send that contract along with some other documents to a judge to get that final approval. So let's talk about how it's done. Before I go into how it's done, let me ask you a favor. If you're getting any value out of this, go ahead and hit the like button. It lets YouTube know that maybe some other people would like it too, and it'll share it with them. So if you like it, go ahead and like it. Yeah. One of the things that's important to remember when we're talking about how to start the process of establishing the parental rights is this. It's often wise if you can, based on the laws in the state where you're doing surrogacy, it's wise to wait until maybe the beginning of the second trimester before you begin the parental establishment process. And you may be asking me, why wait, Corlandos? We already have the contract with our surrogate. She's already gone to the clinic and done the transfer. We've gotten the confirmation of pregnancy back. Let's go ahead and go to court and get this parental order. Well, here's the thing. The first trimester of a pregnancy is typically the time in a pregnancy where if a miscarriage is going to happen, that's when it would occur. So it doesn't guarantee that a miscarriage wouldn't occur later in the pregnancy, but you have more confidence that once you make it to the second trimester, it's more likely that you'll make it through to the delivery. And you don't want to start a lengthy court process or an expensive process because after all, the last thing we want to happen is for you to spend the time and the money to start the court proceedings only to find out the surrogate loses the pregnancy in the first trimester, and then you're out of money and you're going through the issue of rebounding after a miscarriage. So if at all possible, hold off until around that 12th to 14th week to start the finalization process. Now, here's where things get really specific and particular. Your attorney should start the process by gathering all the necessary information from you and from the surrogate in order to prepare the court documents and get them ready for filing. Your attorney is going to need all sorts of information that includes the contract, but also information on the birth hospital, information on your surrogate and her location. Your attorney will need some information so that they can draft the paperwork for you and for the surrogate to sign. Now, when I say paperwork, I don't just mean one or two documents. We're talking about court forms, declarations between all the parties, declarations from the IVF doctor, declarations from all the attorneys. We're talking about background checks. Every venue has their own rules and all the jurisdictions have their own rules about what needs to be filed in order for you to be established as the legal parent. That's why it's so important for you to work with your professionals, work with your attorney to make sure that they're knowledgeable about the court forms in the location where you will be filing for parental rights. Another reason why this part of the process is so important is because it also answers that question of, does the surrogate potentially get parental rights? Well, the answer's no. Let me give you an example of how it works in Los Angeles County. Well, in LA, there are no separate court forms for surrogacy, so to speak. So what we use currently are the forms that you would use in any custody arrangement. So in a typical custody arrangements in traditional family law, you have parent one saying, I want custody, and parent two saying, no, I want custody, and they're fighting it out in court. Well, on the paperwork that we file for surrogates in LA County, you have the intended parents saying, we want custody of this child that will be born from the surrogate. And then you have the surrogate answering that by saying, I agree. I want them to have custody of this child that I'm about to give birth to. Getting this paperwork into the court is important so the court knows that there is no adversarial position here. You guys are both on the same page, both parents and surrogate. So let's wrap things up by talking about the different types of parental establishment procedures. If you've dug around the internet and tried to figure out what all this finalization stuff was all about, you've probably heard a term called PBO, and that stands for pre-birth order and post-birth order. In some states, you're allowed to get a pre-birth order. What that simply means is that state's laws allows you to go before the court prior to the child's birth and be declared the legal parents before the baby even takes her first breath. Now that puts your mind at ease when you're an intended parent going through this process. You're not worried about what's going to happen with my parental rights when the baby's being born. When the baby's being born, all that stuff should be taken care of, and you can simply enjoy that beautiful delivery day. And states like California, Nevada, other states, those states provide pre-birth orders. Now, there are a number of states that do provide pre-birth orders, so I encourage you to consult with your attorney and find out if the state that you're looking to do surrogacy in allows for pre-birth orders. The other way we refer to PBO is post-birth orders. In a post-birth order, it's exactly that. The court will allow you to get a parentage order that says you're the parent after the birth or post-birth. In these arrangements, it's really important that you work very closely with your attorney and the surrogate and her attorney so that they can get this paperwork filed as soon as possible. Because after the baby's born, you have other things to worry about. You have birth certificates to get straightened out. If you're international, you have to worry about passports and things like that. So you want to make sure that you're not running into any timeline issues or anything like that when you're dealing with needing to get a post-birth order. The next type of parental establishment process is one I'm not a big fan of, but for some people it's their only option because of their state's laws or where they're doing the process. And that's a PBA, if you want to call it that. And that's post-birth adoption. I know you're thinking, Corlendos, I've got to adopt my own baby. Well, unfortunately, the laws in some states aren't as friendly towards surrogacy and acceptive as some other states. So yes, in some locations, even though you've done a contract and even though you've done other steps, you still have to go to court and be ruled the legal parent. And in some states, the only way you can do that is through a post-birth adoption. And just so you know, all states aren't created equally when it comes to their views on surrogacy, as you probably already know. And even within some states, the rules are different depending on your relationship status. So in some states, they do allow pre-birth orders for married couples, while for single individuals or for unmarried people or for same-sex couples, they don't allow pre-birth orders. So again, it's so important that you check the specifics of the state you're in so you don't run afoul of any of the rules. If you're watching this video just as, I don't know, some extra credit to get ahead of the curve and you're thinking about going through the surrogacy process, well, I have something for you. And it's called the Surrogacy Roadmap. And in the Surrogacy Roadmap, I walk you through the entire surrogacy process from beginning to end, starting at choosing a surrogate in an agency. So click the link below, download the Surrogacy Roadmap, and I'll see you there.